So me, I'm in South Africa. It's 6 p.m. It's the evening. Yeah, we're opposite to you guys. Um, so I was a homeopathic doctor for 20 years, and it just seemed endless. I don't know if the rest of you are therapists, but there's a point you get to, or I got to, where the feeling of not futility, but like the endlessness of the quest, that like, okay, one's throwing rocks in the water and one's getting a bit of traction. And I was very good at what I did, but it just seemed like the forces, the image I've been working with lately is like what we see with disease is the tip of the iceberg, like literally the tip coming out. But I was aware that I wasn't getting down to the iceberg itself. And then I was chipping like rocks away from the top of the iceberg. You put them in my drink and cool me down. But like it wasn't really getting to the roots of what was causing a lot of this. So, in a sense, this this whole immortal wellness range is an attempt to look at the causative factors in disease. What's actually happening in the backstory and how much we can drill down into the mental emotional framework, the history, the trauma, the um, just the nuances around what actually causes us to be unwell or not the optimal version of ourselves. So that was the quest that I set myself. So I retired myself. I announced to my patients that I was retiring myself and they could become distributors for liberation, or they could, find another homeopath. But um, the idea was like, okay, well, let me take a hard run at this whole concept of disease. I think people, I mean, there's a lot of theory around disease and a lot of, talk around like what is disease and why is it there? And like, and I mean, that's all very well and good. And I don't think ultimately we can know that with any degree of certainty. But what we can look at is like what is really holding us back here? What are we fighting with all the time? The subconscious, the unconscious, the mental and emotional states, or history. These are things that we can actually target quite precisely. We can actually look at and go into these things and begin to unpack them. And this whole immortal wellness journey is really just a sequential progression through these stages as they almost unveiled themselves to me as I became aware of them as problems. Like in a sense, the first one was liberation. And liberation, I'm just going to do this very briefly because I mean it was the flagship product, but it really was an attempt to look at the karma around disease. So, I mean, that word gets bounced around a lot, but when I started taking this liberation, it's based on this 9 gems, and each gem is burnt 100 times, and it's an ancient alchemical formula made in the third century by a Buddhist alchemist. And as I said, each gem has been burnt 100 times, so it literally takes a year to make. But what his intention was behind this was to create a medicine, or I mean, to even call it a medicine is a misnomer. We don't really have the word for such things because it's an advanced technology more than anything, which is able to, like a heat-seeking missile, go back and find the broken thread. The idea we have of karma is very much around like what happened, but the opposite is possibly even more valuable, like what didn't happen. So when we take this liberation with this nine gems, what happens is that all the unfinished threads of the past start to rise up to be finished. So we have meetings with old girlfriends or old boyfriends for girls, like there's a sense of resolution, the unfinished stuff, where we didn't tell that person whatever they needed to be told. There wasn't a parting, a meeting, a closure. All of this comes up in dreams, so Carl Jung said that something done in a dream is functionally identical to something done in real life. So if we can have resolution in dreams, then we can actually move forward with our lives. I'll just tell you one story because it shows this quite quite clearly. So I was in a very intense relationship. This was like 20 years ago. Um, and then we split and we never spoke again. She went off with my best friend. It was like quite messy, and it was dramatic, but part of me always wondered what it would have happened had we stayed together, because it was so abrupt, it was so intense, it was so passionate, and then so abrupt. And in the dream, on the third day after taking liberation, there she was. She was 9 months pregnant with my child. And, I had the feeling of what it would have felt like had we stayed together and she had a child and we'd gone forward. And, I wasn't I wasn't sad that that didn't happen. There was a bit of sweetness around it, but I was glad that I was able to experience the feeling and then let it go. I actually felt something leave my body. It was like, okay, well, this is what it would have felt like. Now you felt it in the dream. You know what it would have felt like. Now you can let it go. And from a reincarnation point of view, this is what causes people to go back through successive incarnations to have the relationship they didn't have in this life, to find the person, have the relationship, and move forward. So, the fact that there is a remedy that's capable of doing this, and we can actually clear our emotional cache of unfinished relationships, businesses, things unsaid, unresolved, whether it's family members, relationships, friendships, like over 8 months, I watched as literally all these people from my past cycled up through my dreams, sometimes in real life. I had a woman who took this in Dubai, and she said three of her ex-boyfriends phoned her on the same day, the first day she took it. And what this showed me was like somewhere in her head, she was running these three different versions of like, okay, well, what if I get back together with Johnny or Paul or Eric, whatever their names were? And there they presented to her so she could actually look at it, talk to them and say, okay, he's an X for a good reason. Okay, move on. He's an X for good reason and move on. But just to have closure with herself about, not keeping this fantasy or this ideal or this unresolved stuff of like, well, maybe we'll get back together, because that's just holding up time. It's holding up space and it's holding up time. And once we get rid of that and we make peace with it, and we don't have to resolve it any particular way. We can say no, we can say yes, or we can have a new relationship. But what the problem is, if it's stuck in limbo and it's unfinished, it's like this ice arrow that goes into the flesh and then gets broken off and sits there and just it freezes time. So what this does, it reconnects the arrow and pulls it out. And what happens when we pull it out, as we resolve these things, is we get a lot more energy, we get a lot more life force, we get a lot more capacity, because we're literally not carrying this bag of rocks from the past. Now, ideally, in an ideal world, we're taught as children to let go of trauma, but in this world, we're not. I mean, animals, when they get traumatized, they'll shake it off. And there's some people have learned this, the shaking, just to get rid of the trauma. But most people didn't. And when a lot of this happened, we weren't able to just shake it off. A lot of it's psychological, it's emotional, it's hard to dig into. So this remedy, the liberation, is able to finish the past, to make peace with that and then move on. And the result of that is we really become happier, lighter people. We're not carrying this weight from the past, and it frees us to have new, fresh relationships, new, fresh interactions. I mean, if anyone really wants an experience, take some of this liberation and go to where you grew up and take it there, and then you'll see how much memory is literally stored in every street corner, and it's dense. That somewhere in our body we're storing all this relationship to the space, and it's not necessarily a bad thing either. It's just memory. It's like layers that have been pasted on and put down and um, stuck, that are now being boosted up. So this is really how the whole thing works. It allows us to move back through our old relationships, our old friendships, family, obviously, and then acquaintances, and clear all of that. So that was where I started with this whole remedy story. I mean, the technology behind it, I know there were some questions around that before, and I mean, it bears mentioning at this point because it's quite important, is, as I said, I was a homeopath, and when we have a remedy, it's like we drop a little pebble in the water and there's a ripple. But what I'm doing here is like I'm really filling in the space in the atoms, as it were, in the memory. So I mean, I'm imprinting memory onto water, and I'm layering it on to make it denser. So instead of like a little stone dropping into the water, I'm taking a grapefruit and I'm chucking it into the water and creating a much bigger ripple. And obviously the ripple translates into a ripple into us through our field, which then has an effect on our bodies, and then it allows us to begin this process because we're essentially sending messages. So, I mean, that one in the case of liberation is an example of one that clears, one of the mental emotional ones that clear. But we have other ones, substances like creation, which are kind of installations. So in the case of liberation, yes, we want to get rid of it, and there's this 9 gems, and then there's the supportive remedies around that, and the shungite, which is in the liberation, which helps to clear the water of the body as the memory comes up, so we're flushing it. But part of a happy integrated person is to be able to embody happy states. And this is where remedies like creation came in. Creation is built around the idea of best day ever. So I literally put myself, on the spot and said, okay, well, what does your best day ever look like? How does this play out? What does it look like? And so I broke it down into the individual components that I felt the best day ever for me would feel like. And that was openness, playfulness, expansiveness, and just being engaged with the moment. And so I built this. I brought in the various substances, the light of Jupiter, the reishi, the bee pollen, the royal jelly. All of these are different aspects that embody one of these things, and I put them all together into this construct so that when we ingest this, when we take the remedy, we're literally saying to our cells, because these remedies are able to talk to our cells. It's saying to ourselves, go out and have your best day ever. I noticed when I started to take creation, I became a better person. I became more friendly. I became more integrated. The people at the supermarket, I'd just chat to the staff behind the counter. I never would have done that before. It turned me into a better person because I was less up in my head. I was more expanded into the world. And this turned me from, I wasn't difficult or disconnected, but a far more engaged person, which is obviously what we all want to be, because as we engage with the world, so it engages with us, and then more happens. So we have these other remedies which are around installations in a sense. And so then I'm not going to go through the pure redemption now because it's a longer thing, but I want to move quickly onto the jellyfish, because part of the this whole process was to look at like what holds us back, what's stopping us from having the fullest expression of a healthy, happy life. And whether we like it or not, old age is a major factor in that. As we age, the systems stop working as well, the immune system stops working as well, the organ systems don't work as well. So if we are able to send a message to the cells to allow ourselves to return to a healthier, more youthful, more invigorated state, then we're obviously able to live a longer, healthier, happier life. So, when I got hold of the jellyfish, I got it from Japan. I mean, and it's tiny. It's like it's fingernail size. And, I just pricked it's got these tiny little nodules on its tentacles. I mean, you need a microscope to see this thing. And like when you prick the nodule, it sends a message to the jellyfish to begin this process of regeneration. And I took it out and I extracted the message. I put the jellyfish back in the sea. It went on its way. And, so in a sense, I just acted as a vector for it to begin its process of regeneration, which is what it does anyway. This jellyfish doesn't wander around the ocean, it floats around the ocean. It can't even really propel itself because it's so light. It just floats around the ocean and then grabs onto things and eats them. But if it gets injured or old, it begins this process of regeneration where it basically drops down to the bottom of the ocean, turns to undifferentiated stem cells, and basically blooms. So think of a rose which is blooming, and then a trauma occurs or it gets old and it sends a message to itself. It dissolves into kind of mush, and then it reblooms as a rose. And it's capable of doing this process endlessly. There's no limit on how many times this can happen. Of course, the jellyfish can die. It can get eaten, it's not indestructible, but if it's allowed its normal course of regeneration through either trauma or age, it can potentially repeat the cycle of regeneration endlessly. So I mean, obviously we're not jellyfish. We have cars and houses and relationships and bones, so we can't just dissolve into this mush and then regrow. But what I was able to capture from this jellyfish was this message, right? This message of regeneration. And, this works across species. It works on pets, it even works on plants. It's basically a universal message of regeneration. But then, I mean, I wanted to go a bit further because the vibrational is amazing. But in terms of the mainstream, I thought, well, let me just isolate this protein that comes from the jellyfish. Let me have a look and see if I can find this thing. Um, and I worked with a biochemist to isolate this protein, which is basically the message that the jellyfish sends to itself to begin this process of regeneration. But as I said, we're not jellyfish. We don't have the DNA it has. It switches on and off genes that, I mean, when you look at what it's doing, I mean, I've read articles on it, it's quite amazing. It like, okay, gets the message, it switches off genes to allow it to dissolve, and then switches on genes again, which allows it to grow. But all within like 2 weeks, it basically goes from jellyfish to mush to baby jellyfish again. It pops up, it basically drops to the bottom and then reblooms. So, we obviously don't have the capacity, both physically or genetically from a DNA perspective, to do this. This is just not even within our brief. But what we do have is the ability to receive this message of renewal, of regeneration, of youthening. When I looked up this word, I found it almost impossible to find this word. Like the dictionary didn't want to give me this word. It wasn't aware that such a word should even exist. It was almost like not part of the English language. It was like a tricky word. And when you say youthening, it's like people are like, oh, that's not possible because of this aging process. But, you know, it's not possible until it is. And then we get to play with it. Now, there's many different versions of this immortal message. Immortal Classic is the initial one. Um, and then we move on to the various other ones. Garuda's far more stimulating. I've used mantras to mix with um, these jellyfish frequencies, because what you find is that, like, as we keep taking it, we start to adapt to it. So I keep on amplifying the frequency. This doesn't happen as much with the molecule, which I've called Turritopsin, after the immortal jellyfish, Turritopsis dohrnii. I've trademarked it as Turritopsin. But anyway, that has brought about the cosmetic range, either, using it as immortal skin, where we can add it to a cream. I've got a cream here in South Africa, but we don't have one in the States. But we've designed the Turritopsin there, the immortal skin, as a liquid. As a protein, we can just add to other creams or substances. It speeds up healing of wounds. It has a youthening effect on the face. Um, in order to have a more localized effect on the body. So, for example, when we ingest it as a vibrational, it's dropping down into us and sort of going systemically, and then it goes wherever it needs to go. I noticed with myself, in the beginning, when I started taking the immortal remedies, I got quite stimulated. I was running around, I was exercising more, I was going up hills, I was not feeling tired. And then it began to work on my knees, my kneecaps, which were a mess. And now they're almost perfect. It basically got to the point, yes, there were times where they got even slightly more sore as it was rebuilding the structure. Was like taking calcium deposits that might have been there, or joint structures which might have been slightly compromised due to age, or, the joint capsule not being as well lubricated. And now they're great. I buzz up the mountain. I mean, I live at Table Mountain. It's 3,000 feet up to the top there. I buzz up the mountain and down, no problem. I don't have knee problems anymore. So this is the power of the immortal jellyfish to renew areas. Now, obviously, with the immortal skin, we can apply it to anywhere we want. Obviously, it's designed primarily for cream, but it can be added to a balm. If we want to apply it for grazes, for cuts. The idea is to allow people to target this substance to a specific area and then use it for that area. I mean, the Immortal Eyes is a classic example of that as well, where and this is where we see the efficacy of the immortal remedies really working is, you know, what I did find, one of the most dramatic things I found with this was floaters. Now, I didn't even know about floaters. I mean, I might have heard of them when I was, doctoring, but normally that goes to eye specialists. So what happens with floaters is the vitreous humor, the jelly of the eye. It's like a jelly-like substance. As we get older, the substance becomes thicker, it becomes denser, it becomes stickier, and becomes darker. And then people will sit there and they'll have like little brown or black spots, which are like shadows over their eyes. So like what they're getting, they're not getting a clear picture. And what I was able to find with the Immortal Eyes, I did made this in obviously in distilled water or saline in the case of the States, and then applied it to the eyes and was able to regenerate the structure of the eye, including this vitreous humor, so that a lot of the floaters just disappeared. And this was even in people in their 70s, it wasn't just localized to people in their 30s. So it showed me very clearly how this substance, this message is working. It's saying to those structures, return to an earlier, healthier version of yourself. And in the case of the vitreous humor, because it's this jelly, it's quite a bioavailable, bioactive substance. It's not like a dense structure like a bone, which will obviously take longer, or an organ system. It'll take longer and it's harder to see. But, these people were actually noticing that their floaters were starting to disappear. So this for me is possibly the best example of how this works. One of the other products, we've got is the Miracle Tooth. And this was, I was playing with the concentration of this protein from the jellyfish, which I isolated from brown rice, and then built up. And, I found that at certain concentrations, this Miracle Tooth was actually able to stop the proliferation of plaque by inhibiting the growth of the bacteria, by stopping if we have the bugs, the bad bugs here and the sugars here, normally they go together and it's like, okay, there's the gangsters and there's the drugs or the guns, and they go together and they go on a binge and they go off and cause trouble. But so basically it stopped that happening. It said, okay, you're going to stay here, you're going to stay here. So the sugars aren't able to get to the bacteria, so they aren't able to proliferate. So what people noticed was like smoother teeth. They would eat sweets and whatever, chocolate and chip and like ice cream, and they wouldn't be. I mean, one doesn't push it. I mean, I tried it a couple of days. I pushed it, and it's like really quite remarkable in terms of how much less plaque you get. Now I don't really get plaque. Sometimes I forget to take it. I still don't get that much plaque. I mean, I've taken it a lot, but it's almost like after a while the bacteria sort of start to diminish in potency, or that they get less, they've been deprived of sugars for so long that they stop working as aggressively. But this is not the only thing that it does. It also, I mean, obviously the plaque is responsible for tartar, which is calculus. That's the other word for it, which is, when the plaque mixes with the mineral matrix from the mouth. There's a lot of minerals in the mouth, and that forms this black, tarry, kind of grainy substance that, oral hygienists take great pleasure in digging out of your teeth. Um, but obviously that stops the growth of the gums, and that causes further problems and gum decay, and that allows bacteria to get in and cause trouble in the mouth generally. So what we found with the Miracle Tooth was, there was a lot less sensitivity, a lot less bleeding. I mean, my gums used to bleed all the time. They haven't bled in a year. That's gone. It's like I remember, like, oh, okay, getting a bit worried. My gums are bleeding. Like brushing my teeth. It's like maybe I'm doing it too hard. Now I brush my teeth the same way, and there's just no blood. There's no sensitivity. The sensitivity to cold, to heat, which is often the nerve. That's when the nerve is slightly impacted. And I spoke to my dentist. I mean, ironically, the reason Miracle Tooth came into being in the first place was, I went to my dentist and I was like, oh my God, it's really sore. What are we going to do? And he looked at me. It's like, oh, you need a root canal. And it's like, Okay, well, I'd really want to go this way. And then in true dentist fashion, while he had his tools in my mouth, he went on to, go into like what actually happens with the nerve. And he said, like, as we age, and if there's been work done on the tooth, the blood supply to the nerve starts to be squeezed, because, obviously through age, and damage to the actual tooth, impinging on the nerve. So the nerve begins to die, and then it starts to feel pain or like hot and cold. It starts to hurt, and that's when we experience the pain. It's not the only cause of root canals, but and I was like, okay, hang on, before we take this rather radical procedure, let me see what I can do. So I went home, and there's nothing like pain to really motivate you to find a solution. It's probably the best motivator in the world. So, I mean, I was highly motivated, say no more. So I played with this concentration with this teratopsin, like making it stronger and weaker. And, I would rinse my mouth out with it 2, 3 times daily. And I noticed that the pain started to go away. And this was serious pain. This was like hold on to the table pain, or like, like bang your head against the wall with so sore pain. It wasn't just the little twinge. This was like, please give me a shot of something and anesthetic right in the tooth level pain. So it wasn't straight away. It was probably about 2, 3 weeks, but I noticed less and less pain. And then I never actually even went back to him, but this was like 2 years ago. So I've never had to have a a root canal because of this. So what this showed me, and I see this in, the other Immortal products as well, is that if we can improve the blood supply to an area, a lot of the problems that arise from diminished blood supply, in this case, like nerve death, can be avoided. So, I mean, I noticed this when I was taking the Immortal remedies in the beginning. It was winter here, which is not like, you know, East Coast winters, but it gets quite chilly because we don't have much heating. But, I was wandering around in the middle of the night, like in a t-shirt, we don't have heating here because it's Africa, right? And I was like, everyone else was freezing, and I was like, wow, I just feel warm because the blood was flowing better throughout the body. The blood vessels were just receiving more because the body was in the state of like, I'm alive, I'm strong, I'm active, I'm, empowered. This was the feeling, but the physical effect was improved blood supply. Okay, so these are the two kind of versions of the remedies. We have the ones which are, the clearing ones. We have the companion ones. We have stuff like Blue Lotus, which is, um, you know, when I was making the Immortal Remedies, it was what happens, present tense, to people when they first start taking them. Two things happen. One, they get quite stimulated, right? They're like, okay, quite energized. So I made Blue Lotus and then Tranquility just to calm people down a bit, so that if they were too stimulated, they could at least go to sleep at night. And Blue Lotus for children is amazing. You give it to them, it just calms their nervous system down. Tranquility is like a slightly stronger version of Blue Lotus because it's got ashwagandha and light of Venus. Um, but that was the kind of calming side, because obviously people do get do need something to sleep sometimes, or if they get too agitated. And then the creation was on the other side, and that was like if people were feeling a bit tired, because sometimes the jellyfish does say to you, like, okay, look, I just need you to lie down and sleep. I need you to regenerate now, and please feed me or give me enough liquids or enough sleep so that I can actually, yeah, regenerate. I remember sitting in the fridge, in front of the fridge, and like just literally drinking a liter. I mean, like that's like half a gallon of orange juice, just glugging it down, just like glug, glug, glug. I haven't done that since I was a child. I was just that thirsty. This kind of almost like animal thirst, where like give me liquids because I need these liquids to a flush the body, but also to rebuild structures, food as well. People were also experiencing that, and my response to them was like, no one was even putting on weight. They were just actually rebuilding structures. Obviously old structures were being broken down and new structures were being rebuilt. So, where we all find ourselves in this whole story is very individual. Some people were very stimulated, some people were kind of sedated and then stimulated, and sometimes it was a mix, one way or another. But what we saw was, everyone's like, oh my God, I have to cut nails twice a week, or like my hair's growing so fast. Not so much for men, but like, the normal markers of healthy cellular functionality were all there. Wounds would heal much quicker if you put some of either the immortal skin on, or any of the immortalities actually. You could put those on, and you could actually see how quickly the cells would regenerate. And this is why obviously we made the immortal skin to add to a cream, so that people wouldn't have to change creams to use our cream, but they could use their own cream and just add a few drops to that, and then get the effect of the immortal jellyfish. So that was really the story. Then I went a little bit further with it, with the Immortal Youth, where I played with different versions of gold. I had three versions of gold. The liquid gold, that's a patented formula I've created, with where I liquefy the gold, and then the gold busman, the gold, the burnt gold, and then the actual gold leaf. So what happens with this is we're able to send messages to the DNA. We're like, in a sense, I mean, I like to see it as whispering to the DNA, like a suggestion, like this would be a good thing to do. So one's able to introduce subtle messages to the DNA to suggest it moves in certain directions. So obviously the potency of this is, we've just really scratched the surface of this. I've been working with the runes with this as well, and it's really quite powerful. And what we see from this Immortal Youth range is the return of the Jing. Now, the Jing in Chinese medicine is life force, and the Jing is the mother of our qi. But I mean, basically, when we're young, we have lots of Jings, we have lots of this ability to do stuff in the world. But then once we get to 30, it starts to diminish. But this is when we take this Immortal Youth, we're able to regenerate the Jing. So think of it like a pool. And as we get older, the pool starts to leak out, and there's less and less in the pool. What this does is that it like blocks the hole, and then allows the natural process of regeneration to occur. So people get more of this life force, but it's not just the physical life force, it's also our capacity to do things in the world, our ability and our desire, and our wanting to do things in the world. Often we get to the point where we're like, oh, I'll do it, but like, oh, it's too much of a mission. Like, I'll have a full day. I mean, it's like 6 o'clock at night here. So I've had a full day. I've cooked my daughter dinner, and I'm still here. It's like normally I'd be like, oh no, I've got to do this. It's like, geez, we're kind of just rest now. But like, I have the capability, I have the energy. It's not like I'm dipping. I'll still go to bed at 10 o'clock, whatever. But it's not like the sense of like drag through the day, needing to stimulate yourself too much. All of that's done. I've moved into another relationship with my own energy. I'm no longer the servant of stimulants to like get me through, or I no longer have this feeling of like, oh, I can't do it, it's too much, or I don't have the energy to start a new business, to do this talk, to go there, do this. I don't really have that anymore. And this is the function of Jing. I mean, in addition to like faster hair and nail growth, like better skin regeneration, all of these things are all Jing markers. But so when we obviously combine and some of in the Immortal Youth, I put the teratopsin and the frequency together, so we have a much stronger action from these. And what Diana's done is she's put a lot of these remedies together into bundles, so that people can use bundles for specific things. If people wanted a bundle for particular um a particular event or particular thing, because we realize that people have very specific lives. But we even did, I think we're even going to do a gym bundle, because we found that the Immortal Garuda and the V12 were able to, and this was just a completely random discovery, the Garuda was able to give people, the muscles stayed pumped up for longer. I don't even know this was a thing, but I mean, obviously, if you're a gym bunny, this is quite a big thing. You want your muscles to look bigger, because that's part of the reason you're doing it. But when this friend of Diana's took this, his muscles stayed bigger for longer. And the V12, which is like a strong, multi-layered version of the Immortal Remedies, the combination of having the physical energy and then getting the buffness. I mean, this is a whole world in itself. But I mean, we have targeted remedy sets for various different people, because we realize that people have different needs. And by bundling them together, we're able to kind of service these needs in a specific way, because we are aware that there's a lot of information, and sometimes people just want to like go through and just like, okay, click, I want this. I don't want to have to read through 50 remedies or 30 remedies and like work out what I need, for like, yes, I want energy, I want calm, I want peace, I want, whatever. We can stream people to some extent, according to what they require, and then they can just pull it down. Dana, I don't know if you want to talk about the bundles a bit more. Are you there?
Sure, I'm here. Yeah, no, thank you for all of that. And yeah, to piggyback on what Adam's saying, part of what I really tried to do with Immortal Wellness is make this less overwhelming, right? So to classify things in collections. And then, Dana and I both really saw the value in these bundles. She and I are very sensitive. Tony and Adam are the opposite end of the spectrum. So as a company, we have like the full spectrum happening. And so we really saw the importance of creating these bundles for people to have some direction. So we have like our main two that we feature. If you go onto the website and you see like right next to homepage, we have a tab called Find Your Path. And that's designed for you to self-assess. Sensitive, am I not? And it's not as, some people are maybe energetically or emotionally sensitive, but they're really good taking supplements. They're robust. So you'll go through and you can assess yourself. But if you're someone you're very sensitive, you're going to go to the gentle path. And if you're typically more robust or normal, you're going to go on the open road. And so you'll see when you go down those paths, we have a sensitive bundle and we have a youthening and a youthening 2.0 bundle. And those are really good starting points to give you. They basically have the sensitive bundle is Immortal Classic, right? Which is that original remedy. It's the reason Adam and I connected, right? It's the star of the show, so to speak, originally. And then so much, it's like what everything evolved from. And then with that is Liberation, Creation, and Blue Lotus. And the way we've changed the other bundles up, they all have Liberation, Creation, and Blue Lotus. We've just given you one with youth and one with youth 2.0. So those are really, really good starting points. And then like Adam said, we have a whole page of, of featured bundles and then all bundles that you can look through and see, oh, the abundance bundle. Awesome, I want that, right? It's going to help give you some direction into what these remedies are going to do. And Dana, do you want to jump in and say?
Dana, I think she might have jumped off. Oh, there she is, yeah.
No. Here I am. Sorry, I had to unmute. Hi. Yeah. This was just, oh, what a great talk, Adam. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana.
I always just take so much more in every time, and just you are the king of these one-liners. Clear emotional cache. Yes, please. That is just, that's such a great visual. You always give such great visuals. So yes, in terms of the bundles, yeah, as Diana said, we broke it off into two paths. Like you also said, Diana, I am very sensitive, and so is she. And um, the gentle path using classic first, right? I don't know if you made that clear, Dee. Like classic is the more gentle path, and then youth is we're calling it the sort of star of the jellyfish remedies, right? It's just got the gold and all the other layers. But I just love the bundles because, as we said, it's a great place to start and it's so well rounded, right? And then you add Miracle Tooth and you're just on your way, right? I actually started with Miracle Tooth and I'm woo-woo. Like, and I'm open to things and I'm like, really? Is this gonna do anything for my serious recession? And it was like, I don't know, a week. And I'm drinking tea and I just realized, wait a second, that didn't hurt. Just the absence of pain was such a miracle. And so, yeah, I mean, I just love starting with these bundles with the addition of Miracle Tooth. I think that's the perfect entry.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that, what we're trying to do here with Immortal Wellness is really address the range of things that might be affecting our health in a negative way, but not addressing. I mean, okay, the miracle tooth is a direct hit on, okay, let's make the mouth the most pleasant and enjoyable place possible and ensure that all the structures are working at the most optimal so that we have a very positive thing. We have like a pleasant dinner party, not like a death metal concert in our mouth, you know. It's like it's a very different kind of, you know, experience, you know, when there is a positive thing. And you'll see when you take this, it's like, wow, my mouth is happy. You know, this friend of mine, um, he was like, he knew it was working because he just didn't have pain and discomfort. I mean, there's this, he even did what we call, there's a South African dessert. It's called a cook sister. It's like translates cook sister, but it's like dough, fried dough soaked in sugar. It's horrendous. Anyway, but it's like a donut, but fried with liquid sugar inside. It's like it's juicy. It's amazing as a kid. But you know, he said like he couldn't eat these before because it would just cause too much pain on the teeth. But then he could eat this, and like so we passed the cook sister test. We were able to like, you know, move beyond that to the level where the teeth weren't sensitive and they could actually, you know, have a normal life. And you know what we notice about health is not like, oh, I feel so healthy. It's the absence of something is wrong. You know, ironically, we know it from like, I'm not in pain, and we know about unhealthiness because we are in pain. But you know what people notice is they just stop noticing their mouth as a problem. You know, that it wasn't there on the this is a problem for me at all, which is amazing. So I mean, this is, you know, we are aiming to be not a one-stop shop for all this stuff, but like something that's really addressing a technology that's really addressing a lot of the fundamental problems that, you know, might cause stuff to originate, you know.